This might look like the Apple Studio display at first glance, but it's actually the G27P from a company called Kuycon, or some name that you've probably never heard of. But for the last few years, they've been making displays that mimic Apple's design of the Studio display and even the Pro Display XDR. They promise similar specs and design to the Studio display, in some cases actually besting it. In fact, I've been really impressed with this display over the last few weeks, so let's take a look at this thing to see if it's a worthwhile display for you to consider. Now let's go ahead and just start with the price of this thing just to get it out of the way. This thing starts at $799 for the flat model that looks more like the Studio display. However, you can actually upgrade to a model that looks like the Pro Display XDR with the cutouts in the back, and that starts at $899. And that is just for the display. That does not include a stand, which is extra. So their basic stand is $109, or you can upgrade to the height and tilt adjustable stand, which is $189. And that gives you the ability to adjust height, tilt, and even rotate it a full 90 degrees. And that's the setup I have right here. I have the height and tilt adjustable stand and the flat back display, which together runs around almost $1,000 for the set. Although right now you can actually save, I think, $90-something and on the stand if you buy them both together. So you're running a little under $900 before any shipping or other additional costs. Now, luckily, Kuycon actually provides a VESA mount inside the box with the display, so if you don't want to pay extra for the stand, you don't have to. You can use an existing VESA stand or VESA arm if that's what you prefer. Spec-wise, this is going to sound very familiar to the Apple Studio display. It is a 5K panel at 5120 by 2880 pixels. The spec sheet shows that it's 60 Hz like the Studio display, but more on that in just a moment. It supposedly has 99% of the DCI P3 color, similar to the Studio display, along with 600 nits of max peak brightness. However, what this display has that Apple's does not is a higher supposed contrast ratio of 2000:1 and support for HDR. As far as the design of this G27P, I have been really impressed with it. I've looked at a lot of new displays recently, including most of the new 5K displays that have come out, and this by far is the best aesthetic design of any of those monitors out there besides the Studio display. From the front, it's just simple and elegant with silver and black. No logos, no buttons, just uniform bezels around the display, which may be larger than you like, but I don't mind them and prefer thicker bezels all around that are uniform in size over thinner bezels. Just like the Studio display, the display and the stand are big blocks of aluminum. Now, it's not exactly Apple fit and finish quality here, but it is so much better than creaky plastic that we've seen on so many other displays, basically every other display out there. The frame of the display is aluminum. However, this is not a unibody design like the Studio display. There is actually a crease. There is a back aluminum panel that kind of sits inside the frame of the display. The aluminum stand is not one solid piece of aluminum like the Studio display or Pro Display XDR. It is actually made of multiple pieces, but it does come fully assembled for you, so you don't even have to screw on the bottom plate. There's no fans or perforations on the top for airflow. There's no perforations on the bottom for speakers. There's no thumbstick for controlling the settings of the display. The only button on this thing is the bottom right-hand corner underneath, and that's just to turn the power on and off. This stand allows for full adjustment of height and tilt and even rotation up to a full 90 degrees. And this thing just feels solid. It moves less than pretty much every other display that I've tested. Sure, I can make it wobble, but it stops almost instantly. This thing is just really solid and really well built, and it even includes chamfered edges around the cable management hole in the back. Like, all of it is just a really good design, like so much better than most other brands out there. I do just have two little nitpicky issues though. The first being that chamfered edge that I just mentioned that I like. Well, I do like it, but I do feel like this cable management hole goes a little bit too low on the stand. So unless you have the display really low, you're pretty much going to see cables hanging down here. The other issue is that the Studio display has this kind of like magic hinge thing over here. This is just a piece of aluminum that's kind of mounted, and it just goes up and down vertically on the stand. And it makes a terrible noise. Like, yeah, it sounds like a grinding noise, and it's terrible. But you know what? You're just gonna set it, and it's solid enough that it's going to stay where you need it. So yeah, really nitpicky. Next, we're going to talk about the ports and the out-of-box color. But first, this is the Ostand fitness case from today's sponsor, Torras. The O fitness case provides everything you want in a case for your iPhone 16, like a built-in 360-degree rotating stand, a finger ring, good grip, drop protection, MagSafe compatibility, and of course, a style that fits your mood. Torras is the original designer of these O-shaped stand cases, and it's perfect for watching a movie or setting up a video call. The 360-degree rotating stand adjusts to any angle with this really satisfying click sound. I like a lot about the design of this case, like the slightly rounded back edges that feel more comfortable in my hand, and the dot matrix side design that gives me a little more grip. And I'm really digging this coastal blue color. The O Fitness has this internal wave pattern that acts as an airbag and to reinforce the corners for impact resistance. If you need even more drop protection, you can check out the Ostand Air line of cases that has literal airbags for the biggest of drops. I'm actually going on a trip soon and I want to have my phone available for photos but not worry about dropping it. And luckily, Torras has the new Loop Go crossbody phone lanyard that is easily adjustable up to 29.1 inches or 74 centimeters. With climbing grade cores, a zinc alloy clasp, and sturdy pad that can hold up to 10 phones, this thing is tough. So if you want to check out the new Ostand Fitness, the O Air, or the Loop Go, you can save using the links in the description down below. And my thanks to Torras for sponsoring this video. When it comes to the ports on the G27P, you do have a number of options. On the backside, you do have a single USB-C port that can be used for display connections, but you also have an HDMI 2.1 and a DisplayPort 1.4 connection on the back. You can actually use the included remote to switch between inputs, so you can switch back and forth between a Mac and a Windows PC or a game console or whatever you want to connect to this display, but you can also use the remote to change things like color and contrast and other display-related settings. On the right-hand side of the display, there's actually 2 additional USB-A ports and a headphone jack. Now, all of the USB ports on here are actually running at USB 2.0 speed, so I wouldn't really count on them for anything other than maybe a mouse or a keyboard dongle. My first impression of the display itself, I was kind of blown away. I've looked at so many different panels lately, including 5K panels, that all have like anti-glare matte coatings on them. This doesn't. This is a glossy panel similar to the studio display, and the colors and the brightness just blew me away. Everything just looked like the way they were supposed to look. Everything was bright, but not oversaturated. Everything looked accurate to the way that I expect them to look after years and years of using a Mac. I ran it through my usual battery of tests, including looking for things like panel uniformity and backlight bleed. And to my eye, I didn't really see much that stood out. It all looked like an IPS display without really any issues. I did notice one little small dark band when cycling through solid colors, but I only saw it during this test and didn't see it in any regular use of this display at all. Backlight bleed on the G27P was not perfect, like most IPS panels, but it was better than some of the others I've tested recently, like the Asus 5K. I tested out watching some movies on this display, and as expected, the higher 2000:1 contrast ratio made movies look really good. This is a scene from John Wick that has a lot of black and a lot of dark in the frame, and the higher contrast ratio just makes everything pop and makes things look like they probably should. Now, it's not OLED levels of contrast, but it is much better than 1000:1 contrast ratios of most IPS displays. Now, I wanted to test out HDR on this display because it supposedly supports HDR 600, and unfortunately, most IPS displays that have HDR support, it's just terrible, but I did find one interesting thing. Going into the settings to enable HDR, I actually found that the refresh rate is running at 75 Hz, not 60. Now, people rail on the studio display all the time because it's only 60 Hz. And sure, higher refresh would be nice. And is 75 Hz enough hertz to be fast enough for you? I don't know. Maybe there's a little less motion blur. Maybe things are a little bit smoother. It's not 120 Hz, but hey, at least it's an upgrade. Now, I did go ahead and enable HDR on this display and test out some HDR YouTube videos. And maybe I can see a little bit of an HDR effect here, but there's no dynamic dimming zones. It's not OLED. You're not going to get a full real HDR picture out of an IPS display. So out of the box, everything looks pretty impressive actually overall. The colors look good and it gets really bright. But I had to, of course, check it a little bit more scientifically, I guess you could say. So using the SpiderX Elite calibrator, I was actually able to run it through all of the tests to actually understand what exactly it is putting out. And as I expected, it's pretty good. So on the left side, I have the results from this Kuycon display, and on the right side, I have the results from the Apple Studio display. Both of them do get 99% of P3 color, but the Kuycon actually gets 97% of Adobe RGB compared to just 88% on the Apple Studio display. So the Kuycon actually shows more colors than the Studio display. Now looking at the max brightness and contrast of these two displays, both of them are supposed to get up to 600 nits of brightness, but the Kuycon actually went above and beyond at 704 nits compared to 574 on the Studio display. And the max contrast of the Kuycon was 1610:1 compared to 960:1 on the Studio display. So the contrast of the Kuycon was almost double, like much better on the Kuycon. And then looking at the actual color accuracy, so how close to the actual color did the display get? Well, the Kuycon got a delta E of 0.91, which is extremely good, and the Apple Studio display got 0.68, which is just a little bit better. Both of these basically can reproduce the colors exactly as you expect them to be on the display. Now, unfortunately, it's not all roses for this Kuycon display. There are some issues with brightness consistency across the panel. So as you can see here, there's a lot of this dark red for the Kuycon display, which means that at 100% brightness, there's pretty big variations in the color depending on what part of the display you're actually looking at. That's interesting because to my eyes, it actually looks pretty uniform, but the tool definitely picked it up. Now, look at the Studio display and you can see that it has much better color uniformity across the display. And you can see similar results with just the brightness uniformity across the display with up to a 29% difference from one corner to the other on the Kuycon compared to maybe a 12% difference on the Apple Studio display. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a glossy panel that looks really good. There is a slight anti-glare coating on here, which does an okay job at blocking out some of the lights here in my office. But if you just stand it up right next to the Studio display, you can see that the Studio display just has a much better anti-glare effect on the glass than the Kuycon. One of the good things about the Studio display is the way that it integrates with macOS. You can control the screen brightness, you can control the volume, you have the built-in webcam and the speakers and all that built into the Studio display all works seamless with macOS. With Kuycon and most other third-party displays, you don't get any kind of built-in control. And of course, there are no speakers or webcam or anything in this Kuycon display. It is just a display. But if you actually just install this free utility called Monitor Control, you can then adjust the brightness of the Kuycon display using the built-in controls on the keyboard of the Mac. When it comes to the sleep and wake time of this display when connected to macOS, it is really fast, probably better than just about every other display out there except for the Studio display. It goes to sleep fast, it wakes up fast. What more could you want? And like I said, I've spent a lot of time with 5K displays recently from other brands. So how does this Kuycon compare to those? Well, compared to the Studio display, which usually you can find on sale for around $1,200 or $1,300 at the moment, the Studio display just has more consistency across the panel. It works slightly better with macOS. It's got speakers, a mic, and a webcam. It's only got one Thunderbolt input connection, so you can't use HDMI or DisplayPort, and it has a more refined, better overall design. Higher quality design than the Kuycon. Compared to the benq 5K, the benq has better backlight consistency across the display. It also has Thunderbolt 4, including pass-through, so you can have two displays connected with a single port on your computer. The benq is also all plastic with a little bit of a chin, and it's a little bit more expensive now because of tariffs running $1,350. Then there's the Asus 5K, which is a little bit more with tariff pricing at $849. It's got worse backlight bleed and a cheaper, uglier design. If you don't need Thunderbolt 4 and you don't want to pay for the Apple tax, then this is actually a pretty good option as far as pricing. But there are a couple things to consider. This Kuycon brand is probably not a brand you're familiar with, and you can't just go out to Amazon or B&H Photo and buy this display. You have to buy it off the web. According to the website clickclack.io, that has this display for $799, and who I reached out to get a review sample for this display, there is a 1-year warranty on the display. However, the brand of the display is Kuycon, not ClickClack, and there's a whole nother website called Kuycon.us, and it's got a different name. It has Pro in the name, and the specs are slightly different, and sometimes the photos don't even match up, like with the ports being on the wrong side. So if you have a problem with this display in the future, I actually don't know who you should reach out to. Should you try this Kuycon.us website, or should you try ClickClack.io? I'm not sure. Searching around the internet, I found a lot of positive reviews of the Kuycon displays, including the older model, the G27X, and it seems like support through clickclack.io has been pretty good. This person had 4 displays, returned all 4, and had no issues at all. Other people had no dead pixels and just overall positive experiences with the display. But overall, it might be a slight gamble to purchase one of these displays just because I don't know what the support is going to be like long term. I've had 0 issues with this display and I don't expect to have issues. It's exceeded my expectations for sure, even more so than some other more known brands. But anyway, that is the Kuycon G27P. It has a beautiful design, solid build materials, a great screen that's color accurate, and to my eyes, a great picture overall that I enjoy using. It does everything I need a display to do. But what questions do you have about this G27P? Is this something that you're looking to pick up? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you're looking for something more of a 4K OLED option with a great design, check out this video right over here. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.